Hi.
Hello, Internet. We are back again. I believe this is episode 8. We're still speaking with Sergeant Major SW Fourie. He is from Reconnaissance Commando. Then it became a regiment. And we're still in Angola. And that is where most of the war actually took place. That was the important one because that's where the National Service men, that's where they went to. Sometimes not inside Angola, but right on the border, which is called Wambuland, which is the northern part of Namibia. So that in the South African Bush War scenario is when people say they went to the border, they went to the war. That is what they mean. But as we've seen in previous episodes, special forces were everywhere. There's basically not a country in Southern Africa where they were not, and normally where they went, something went boom at night. Very, very loud booms. It really worked on them. So Esme, can you carry on with the story for us? We're still in Angola.
Yes, yeah. Just to give some insight on scenario in Angola, SWAPO, which mostly consists out of Uvambus, which is a tribe from Namibia, that state southwest Africa. They deployed, they had the bases, operational, not bases, admin bases in the southern part of Angola. And as the South African army start attacking them, they move deeper and deeper and deeper higher up into Angola. And I believe the Angolan government had sort of an agreement with them that if they need them to help MPLA to attack UNITA, they don't have a choice. They must join that kind of fight. And yeah, so they used Angola as a base to infiltrate back into Namibia, plant landmines, ambushes, landmines on farm tracks, things like that. That happened quite often there in the northern part of Namibia. It is interesting, even where kids were transported, they were in army vehicles going to school. So they were in army vehicles and they were escorted by army, like the Rattlers, for instance. So the children was well protected. So if they drove over a landmine, at least they would be safe. So, so we were deploying in Angola. We would quite often get in contact with MPLA soldiers. So they also became the enemy because they support our enemy. And the latter part of the war was basically only against them. There could be SWAPO amongst them, I think there were. So, but yeah, it was two enemy forces blended as one. So the next two operations was more against aircraft. Aircraft they had the superiority in the southern part of Angola. They had the MiG-21s, they had the Sukhoi, which was bomb carrier. They had the Hind 24, which was an attack helicopter. Then they had Antonov 22, 24. So they had all top of the range Russian aircraft. And as we know, the MiG-21 was just that much faster and quicker than our Mirages. So they couldn't go into a dogfight, although our pilots were of a high caliber, especially the Impala pilots, of course, the Mirage pilots as well. So the operation we did next was we had Unimorks again, and then we towed anti-aircraft guns. It was a 23 mil, twin barrel 23 mil, 14.5, I think also twin, can't remember. And then we had on the Unimorks, on my vehicle, we had it 12.7. And then we had mortars as well. So we deployed with UNITA. So they would escort us all the way up to our target area. And that was a military airfield in the southern part of Angola, but now we were much higher up. And The idea is to, with UNITA, to train some of the officers and team leaders, because the plan was that they're going to do an attack, full-scale attack on this airstrip military base, with the support and leadership of a couple of our guys. And then if there was any resupply or aircraft in the air, we would attack them with that weapons. And that's exactly what happened. One morning, UNITA went, and I think there must have been about 300, 400 of them, and they walked slab-bang into MPLA, which were searching for us, and it was a hell of a firefight. Normally, you can hear individual rifles if it's a small group. That was like the sound of an attack plane. It was just one noise. You couldn't hear individually rifles being fired. I've never had that in my life before. And that carried on for about half an hour. So, but what they do, and we were briefed afterwards, how they actually do, both sides, UNITA included, and MPLA included, they would fire their weapons on automatic. So they would put a massive lot of lead onto the enemy. And then after about half an hour, it all of a sudden became quiet, and then we heard them starting to celebrate UNITA. So the MPLA ran away, and they did manage to kill a lot of them, and they withdrew. They came back to us. And then the next day, early in the morning, we heard the Antonovs. I think it was 2 or 3 of them that came, most probably bringing in resupply. So the other guys were low on ammo. And we, unfortunately, we opened up a little bit too early. I think UNITA opened up. And then we followed with the 23 more, the 14.5, and the 12.7. And the first Antonov sort of flew nearly right into that. We put a curtain of rounds into the air, so for them to fly right into it. And the second and the third plane picked up this barrier of tracers coming up into the air, and they did it like escape and evade out of the area. Not sure if we hit one. And then our team leader, Chris Greiler, he told us HQ sent him photos. So they sent the reconnaissance plane. I remember that plane. It was very high up in the air, out of reach for us to fire on it. What he did, he took photos of where the guys on the ground indicated they think the UNITA base was. And on the vehicles, they identified us, white guys, standing on the back of the vehicle. So that was clearly on the photos, and HQ was the helling with us. We weren't black enough. You could see our white faces. So they must have had a very good lens taking that photos. So then from HQ's side, they said, withdrew. There's a heavy air attack that's underway. And of course, we didn't want to withdraw. We felt, no, we can't leave the UNITA guys behind. So we really felt bad packing up, leaving, looking at the other guys staying behind. And I think we were about 1 day away from that area. And there was a massive air attack by, I believe, Sukhoi and MiG-21. So they flattened that area around. Most probably, most of the UNITA guys managed to get away. Remember, they're also in trenches. And we didn't have any ground-to-air missiles like the SAM-7 we used later on, or any other kind of missiles. So yeah, you couldn't really take on that kind of aircraft.
If you can see behind me, is there, That fellow shooting something like a rocket on the bottom.
That's it.
Would that be a SAM-7 or 6 or
Yes.
RPG?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, it's got a heat-seeking lens and like a gyro that turns. If you fire, it will start turning, and it will pick up noise level the moment it locks onto the aircraft. That operation we're gonna talk, I think, next. Yeah, the next operation we're gonna talk about that. Yes, yeah. So that basically finished that operation, and we can actually go over. I don't know if you got any questions on that one, Chris.
Yeah, you did say that the head office was quite upset with you people being recognized, I suppose, as white people and not tourists either.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose what can you do? I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, we weren't only the 6 or 8 guys. We were there with at least a company plus UNITA guys. So we didn't really think of blacken up, which we normally do. So yeah, unfortunately, that reconnaissance plane picked us up standing on the back of the vehicle, actually looking up to them because we heard the plane.
I wondered I wonder how we got hold of those pictures. It must have been intercepts, radio
Yes.
intercepts or something, because they were quite good at that.
Yeah, they were, yeah. And it was within a day or two after the plane came over us that we HQ informed Chris we are in trouble. And they
But nothing
identified.
further happened about it. I mean, by the time that you got home again, it was like, okay, whatever. Or were they still going on about it when you got back into South Africa?
No, that wasn't of interest. When you're back, they already start planning for the next operation. So that one was forgotten. Although we have debriefing of that kind of operation. That point didn't actually, most probably they did discuss it, but it was done. There was nothing, you can't reverse it.
Okay, so I'm sure that we want now to get to the pictures behind us where the aircraft was actually downed. I always say to people when I introduce this here to my wife first, and she's like a peaceful person, not used to South Africans. She think we are very violent people. I don't know why. We're not that violent, unless you have to be.
Yeah.
I think his first words to her was, we shot down 3 aircraft one day. And she said to me, you've got some strange friends. You need to explain.
Yeah. Now my father had a farm right on the border between Namibia and Angola, and about, I would say, 90 km to the western side of Burundi. He had an irrigation farm there. He was one of the first farmers that started that irrigation with a spill point, where the massive wheels would go around and you would irrigate quite a massive area. And he had a very nice bar right on next to the Quito River. Yes. No, sorry, that was the Kavango. Sorry, that's the Kavango River. It actually comes from Angola, Kavango, Kwandu Kavango. That was the river. And when it hits the northern part of Namibia, it comes to Kavango River. So that was where our farm was. And then he was there one morning, busy working on this irrigation system, and he say, yeah, out of nowhere, Alouette helicopter land there onto the field. And he saw two guys climbing out of the helicopter, and he recognized the maroon berets, which we wear. And the guy introduced himself, and the first thing my dad told him is, my son is wearing the same beret. And it was a big surprise that I realized, it was me. He's my father. And it was Colonel Besby. And he asked Colonel Besby, they did a reconnaissance on the river, and just north of our house, or higher up from the farm, still on the farm, there is a low spot which they can breach with Unimogs. So and he told my father it will be in within a week, and they will arrive at night, so that at least he's informed. And I know they were a colored platoon that's supposed to protect my dad and my mom. So they were also informed. So my father told me late at night he was already, he hide in the bushes. They're very close to where they're gonna cross. And that was the highlight for him. Here in the middle of the night, these Unimogs cross one after the other. I think it was 4. And disappear into Angola. Yeah, so that was but anyway, so we were already deployed. We were already in.
Can I just ask you quickly, were you ever trained in off-road driving? Is there like a special technique to cross a river in a vehicle?
No. You would do most of the time bundu bashing. So you will learn a lot to drive in the bushes, but not crossing a river. It would either be something like what do you call it?
A drift?
A raft or yeah. But I think there the river was shallow enough for the guys to cross without putting them on a floating platform.
Yeah, so they could wade through it, if I can use that word. But you were not specially trained for that. I expected you who grew up on a farm to actually know such things.
No. Remember, in Namibia, there's no rivers, or very few rivers. Most of them
dry rivers.
Dry rivers, yeah. Angola, of course, is a total different scenario. There's a lot of rivers, a lot of water. So we were deployed with UNITA, and we had a certain time span to get to a river again and to lay ambushes for aircraft. Not really lay ambushes, but we were on the route that they were flying. So UNITA, the further we got, the closer we got to the enemy front, the more negative they were. They weren't in a hurry anymore. So one morning, Flip Marks was the team leader, decided this is it. We're leaving them behind. And it was 3 Unimogs, and we were 9 guys in total, if I remember correctly. Again, I was on a Unimog with a 12.7 millimeter. The other one had a 14.5, and the third one had a 81 millimeter mortar. All these were actually installed on the vehicles. Now, before that, we did a lot of training, so I'm not going to go into that. Training at night, firing these weapons. So all these operations, there were always a lot of training beforehand. But I'm skipping that part. So it normally covers a week or 2. Maybe we do ambush trolls, get training on the SAM-7, do stripping and assembling on the heavy caliber weapons like the 14.5, clean them, fire them, do vehicle maintenance, learn about a vehicle, how to do basic maintenance if something breaks. So yes, that can always, before deployment, there was a lot of training.
Yeah, I do recall you said before that raid on Beanbag, the one on Maputo, you people also, started changing wheels just to see how quickly you could do it.
Yes,
and even if it's possible, because some of these vehicles, not the Unimogs, but I don't suppose that the others, the Urals and the captured ones, are in that good condition. I'm sure that army mechanics would have looked at them before you got hold of them.
Yeah, and then of course we would freshen up our medical signal, not so much explosive, that wasn't involved in that operation. So yeah, a lot of our time, so we would actually, our team deployed from Rundu, I think. Yeah, we deployed. I can't remember how we got on the other side of the river. I'll actually confirm with 1 or 2 of the other guys. So now we were driving up north. We were very high up north. We didn't realize. Only afterwards we were informed that we were very close to, I believe, Quito, a massive military base. We were unaware of that. So after about 2 weeks in the bush, we were still driving through dense, very, very dense bushes, the 3 Unimogs. Now, without UNITA, it was only us. And we heard this Antonov plane, very distinctive noise, and not that high either, but we were too late for that plane. So it passed, so it was using the river as navigation point. And we drove about another hour. So now we were much closer to the river. And basically we just stopped close to the river. The same Antonov returned. And we immediately had, I think, 2 SAM 7s with us. Now, just to reverse a little bit on that story, about a couple of weeks before that, France, with another team, shot down an Antonov a couple of, probably about 50, 60 kilometers from where we were. And then there was another one shot down. So now we were here lining up for the third one.
Is that the one here behind me?
Yes, it's that one, yes. So Tommy was first in action with his SAM 7. And like I explained, it's got a heat-seeking lens in front. So it will, you lock onto the plane and you pull the trigger in and you hold the trigger. And that missile will not go until we pick up enough heat from the target. And you can hear it by the whining noise from the gyro. It will pick up noises and will get a higher pitch, and the next thing it will go. And then the missile was launched, and we thought, it's just dropping. It like dropped right onto the river, and the next moment it just shot up into the air. And like with a white spiral behind it of smoke. And then it disappeared. And we thought, it's probably descending again. And the next thing we saw a flame on the Antonov's wing, right onto the engine. Now it was flying south-north away from us. And it was flying for a minute or two, and then it turned around and it came back. And now it came lower and lower, and we could see the engine was burning. And it fell nearly in line with us, but across on the other side of the river. And you could hear it took out massive trees. It was interesting noise to hear. Although we couldn't see it, we could hear it clearly.
How broad was the river?
Pardon?
How broad is this river?
Probably about 800 meters plus.
Oh, okay. So it's a river. It's a big river.
Yeah, and with a lot of crocodiles. There's no way you can cross it. And what we didn't know is there was a team of us on the other side. So they never informed one team of the other team for security reasons. If one team gets captured, they can't compromise the other team. And there was no way we could walk into each other. It was just the river was a barrier. And then the next moment we heard quite a big firefight. And in that team was 2 big friends of mine, James Steitger, Evan van der Merwe, 1 or 2 other guys, and with UNITA as well. So what they were lining up to shoot the same plane, and the next moment they saw this vapor trail here going up, and they couldn't believe what's busy happening here because they didn't know about us either. And the plane hit about 600 meters from where they were. And it slid up close to the river, but it stopped. It didn't go into the river. And then they bail out, and then they start trying to extinguish the fire. Of course, it was a Russian pilot, co-pilot, and a Russian tech guy, a Sergeant Major. And so what James did, he told the guys to sling their rifles. Don't hold them in an attack. If you're going to attack it, sling the rifles, because now they black is beautiful on their faces, and UNITA guys, and then they sling their rifles and they start walking towards the plane. And the MPLA soldiers saw them and waved and talked to them, said they must come help. And when they closer, they opened up fire on these guys. And there was chaos.
Oh, no, I have a picture in my mind of a fastest draw in the West. Being from a rifle, which is here on your shoulder, like cool. But the next moment you start, it's like a dreadful surprise.
Unfortunately, the pilot jumped into the river where he was grabbed by a crocodile. He disappeared. They caught the Sergeant Major.
The flight engineer.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what happened to the co-pilot. And then they start walking south. And it was they got contradiction. Then one day, HQ will tell him, hand over the Sergeant Major to the UNITA guys. Actually, they caught two. There were two guys, yeah. They caught a co-pilot as well. Then they said they were told to walk back north. Then they would go back towards where the aircraft was. And then the next day, it was, no, keep the Russian pilot and Sergeant Major. They must come to South Africa. And that carried on and on. And eventually, they were low on water and food, but most of that they feed to the two Russians, because there was a very clear message from HQ. Nothing must happen to these two guys. What happened afterwards to them, I'm not sure, but they weren't killed. I think there were a lot of information distract from them. And then, of course, now we were still there. So we were now camouflaged and ready for action. And then the next day, what we meanwhile did, we lined up our sights of the mortar right onto the wreck of the airplane. But of course, there was a lot of dead ground. Dead ground is a ground that you can't see. Specifically with the river, in the river there would be a small line of bushes, so you wouldn't see the part behind that, which is another 200-300 meters. So we would line up our sights of the mortar right onto the wreck, and early one morning we heard the distinctive noise of Hind-24 helicopters. Now that is an aggressive chopper. It's got a coaxial 14.5, and then it's got 4 rocket pods on the side.
It's a gunship. It's a gunship. We call it a crocodile, Russians themselves.
Yeah,
they say it's a crocodile.
Yeah, very good attack helicopter. It didn't sound like our helicopters. What we actually did, we had our HF radios on, and we picked up the Cubans talking to each other. We picked that up, and we actually picked up the radio frequency, the radio talk, before we heard them. So we knew something is coming. So what they did, one of the helicopters flew on the other side, and 2 of them flew on our side. So for one or other reason, they thought whoever attacked the plane is on the other side of the road. So they flew right above us, but not above us. One was above us and turned towards the wreck, and the other one was lower, and they were flying, they were flying south to north. Okay. So Flip Mark said he will open fire with his AK-47. The moment he opened fire, we can open fire. So I was standing behind my twin 12,7, so waiting for them to appear. And I lined up the first helicopter, and as Flip opened, they immediately responded. Luckily not firing on us, they turned away from us. And I hit the tail blade of the helicopter. I could see a piece disappear, and they dropped, and I thought they're going to drop into the river, but I kept flying just above the water level, and they hit the ground on the other side, very close to where the Antonovs were. So the guys fired the first mortar. It must have been about 500 meters too short. You could just see a massive water spout. And we realized, and then we had to put more charges on. And I think by the third bomb, we were very close to the chopper. What happened in the meanwhile, now that chopper was out of action. And one of the other helicopters, Antonov's, Heinz came and it landed right next to that chopper. And they will start carrying wounded guys to the other chopper. And as they took off, the mortar that was dropped from our side fell right under that chopper. And that chopper also came down. So now we had 2 choppers there. And the Antonov. Yeah, and so our celebration was a very short time span. We were still celebrating, and, but now in a low-level noise. And we heard another noise we were not familiar with. And we took our binos out and we looked, and it was BRDMs, and they amphibious vehicles. So these guys have picked us up. What we didn't realize, there was also a ground force on the way there. So it was a combination of air and ground force on the way to the wreck. And of course, they could clearly pick up where we were on the other side. And they were busy approaching us, crossing the river. And I remember we had ground siege across the vehicles as extra camouflage. And what happened if the leaves drop, it would form part of your camouflage. That is the quickest we grabbed that, and we left with the Unimogs. Now remember, Unimogs are soft skin, BRDMs are armored vehicles with a 14.5.
I'll put a picture here for us. It's like a light tank. You can't shoot it with a rifle.
Yeah. So we left in with a hell of a speed. I remember we were driving over Umaramba. Now, Umaramba is just a prehistoric dry river, formed many years back. Normally no bushes in it, it's flat, open terrain. And so we were speeding across this Umaramba, and out of the corner of my eye, I picked up something. And I looked to the left, and I saw the BRDM driving parallel to us on the same Umaramba. Now, their vehicle were faster than ours, more stable. And luckily, their turret was close. Nobody was standing in it. If there was anybody in the turret, we would be killed. We can't go in a firefight with them. So we were driving parallel across the same Umaramba, and we just banged to the other side. And we kept on driving because you can hear they were all over. There wasn't only 1 or 2. There was a lot of them, BRDMs, looking for us. And yeah, so we got out of that. And only long afterwards, we were informed that we were very close to Kutukanabal, which was more than a brigade station. Then they got all the armor and aircraft and everything to assist them. Yeah. So yeah, that finished a very interesting operation.
Well, I don't even know what to say about it, because I can see it playing off in front of me. That was just magnificent. I can just imagine the sights of those mortar bombs started dropping there next to the wreck. You know, and the one hind is down, and now the other one went down. You don't know if they were completely destroyed or were they just
what
damaged.
happened afterwards, and one of our small team, and this is his name. So I'm using his nickname was Kaffer Smith. He was very dark-skinned guy, and we nicknamed him Kaffer Smith. That was his nickname. I don't even know what is his real name.
But the answer is
Human
too good. Yeah, that's army humor for you.
Yeah, and they were sent in there, him and another guy. The small teams only operated 2 guys, and they actually came and they pulled them out with vehicles, the Antonovs, dragged them probably back to Quito, and salvaged what could have been salvaged from the Antonov, but the choppers they took out, and you could see through the bushes, you can see that it was dragged away from there. I'm not sure what they want to do with it.
Okay, perhaps we should just explain this, that normally you people were working in about 8-man teams.
Correct.
This specific one, you had 9 people there because you had 3 vehicles, I suppose, one driving,
Correct.
one manning the machine guns, and one is just, keeping a lookout, navigating. But when
Correct.
you say small teams, for you, small teams, you mean 2 people.
2 people.
That would be the scouts, like reconnaissance type of.
Yeah, what I'm thinking, I must actually make notes of it. We must speak to James Tytger as soon as possible, and then we can speak to Jack Greef. He was like the most senior experienced team leader in small operations, and he was the guru of that. So he can tell us very, very interesting stories about.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. I mean, I'm trying to imagine the guts it must take for 2 men to jump behind enemy lines. And for certain, if those people get hold of you, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, for interest's sake, and they also learned as they progress into small teams is that they, I believe, and Jack will confirm, they carried only 2 magazines, one on a rifle and one spare, because they said if you're in a firefight, you're gone. You only 2 guys, so you can't put up a stand. So what is the purpose of carrying 6 or 8 magazines? So they had one on a rifle. For that matter, I think they only had the one on the rifle. And then, of course, the equipment were extremely heavy, 60, 70 kilograms. I think they even deployed like that, where they have 2 rucksacks. They would carry the one for 5Ks, come back for the other one. And Jack will tell us very, very interesting operations, how they deployed, how they were picked up once before.
And that was also part of Bravo Group, or one reconnaissance.
No, they were, sort of, but they were, the small teams were operated on their own, and they would always go in before big operations and do reconnaissance. Some of the other ops we're going to talk about later. I'm going to specifically talk about small teams operating.
Yeah, that's good. I'm making a note here, but something occurred to me is that when you go on an operation, you obviously bring your rifle back. Whatever you brought in, you will bring back. Would you have had your own AK-47 issued to you, or would you get a new one from armories every time you deploy?
No, you used the same one. I had the same one for the full 10 years I was there.
Okay, so they issue it to you, you know that rifle, you trust that rifle, and then that's what you use.
And then we also had an R1, but that was just for parades. Never used them, although it was an excellent weapon. But yeah, AK-47 was allocated to you, and there was no serial numbers on it, or the serial numbers that used to be on it was grind away, and they would put a very, like handwriting, but into the metal, a new number, and that is your rifle for the full time that you were there.
Okay, that's great. And these rifles, I just want to explain the context here, did not have any of these optical sights or anything. You people were using the standard rifle as it came out.
So very plain AK-47, and we had the RPDs and the PKMs, but that was normally, if we know, like a base attack, which we did in Mozambique, then we would have a RPD and a PKM.
Okay, so if I may ask you, the ammunition supplied for these weapons, Were they the original Soviet Union type of ammunition,
Yes.
or were we manufacturing?
Yeah. They would actually come in a metal tip container, and some of their containers you have like you open a tin of bully beef, the same action. That's how you open the ammunition tins as well, containers to take out there.
And the quality of these weapons, would you say, more than excellent?
Yes,
Good the explosives and
because the deployment like that, you're not very keen to strip your weapon completely. You know Murphy's Law. So we very, very seldom strip the weapon unless we sort of in a very safe area. So that weapons is not a high caliber weapon manufactured and of high quality metal or wood, but it worked, it operated with low maintenance.
Okay, I just want to ask some question which occurred to me here. I'm back at this tree now which you lit up with the infrared. You will remember at the beginning, is it this one or the one before? I can't remember. But anyway, so you did say to me that some of you would have had night vision. South Africa actually had very, very good night vision, even in those days. They were leading the world. Even today, they have excellent, excellent night vision. But when you do your layout, I'm trying to understand if night vision has changed the way you would do your layout. If I might just explain, somebody might have missed the episodes we talked about that, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. You would walk your patrol, but patrol commander would see a place he wants to lay out. He walks right past it, then he makes like a dog leg, he comes back, there you lie for the night, and you're very quiet, you don't move, nothing, you're just listening, because you're expecting people to follow your tracks. You can see them, you put your claymores out. Right, now I want to know, would you then switch the night vision around for those guys on guard duty to be able to scan around you, or how does that work?
In the beginning, when we deployed in Mozambique, we didn't have night vision equipment. So you had to use your eyes and your ears, and it is unbelievable how your senses, the ability of your senses will enhance, so that, you know, we had a joke, if we're back in Durban, your smelling is so good, you could smell if you walk this side of the road, you can smell the perfume of a woman walking on that side of the road. It was unbelievable how your senses will actually become better in the bush, especially smoke or noises. Remember, half past 5 at night, we would actually go into our lying up spot, or place for the night. So your eyes become, how can I say, climatized to the darkness. Yeah. And
that's also what they used on the Navy boats. We'll get to that, of course, where they would darken the ship with these red lights inside.
Yes.
Before they let you out to, to go and do what you do. But that's my entire point, is what did the arrival of these night vision equipment, did that change the scenario in any way? In how you would do
normally
your,
the night vision would only be part of the team if we had to do reconnaissance on a specific, let's say, a military base, to see what's happening around the military base, or installation, oil depot, that kind of thing. Then night vision will be allocated to us. And of course, also with the actual deployment of the bigger operations, we will talk afterwards now, there will be night visions available. But for long bush deployment, we didn't use night vision equipment.
Okay, I find that fascinating, because, this night vision is actually quite heavy. And you concentrate around your head, and then you look through this thing, and it's fantastic. It's the most... I recall the first time I made a deal with an army base, and they borrowed it to me. They gave me some night vision, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was testing this in the middle of the night, and I could just see, and it was just absolutely fantastic for me. But then I read something. When the Americans tried to rescue the Iranian embassy. They flew in with a whole bunch of helicopters and they were using night vision, and it stressed out the neck muscles of the pilots. So much so that they really had problems to keep it on their heads all the time. And so they worked it out. They put a bungee cord, these things would stretch, and they tied it to the roof of the helicopter, and then it helped them tremendously from the weight.
Yes.
That's how they overcame that. Of course, I'm talking now 1980, I believe, when that took place.
Yes.
Eagle
Yeah.
Claw, it failed. It failed for many, many reasons.